Some people don't break loudly. Some people break in silence while carrying trays and smiling at strangers. The rain hammered against the back alley windows of Belladonna's like handfuls of gravel thrown by an angry god, and I kept my head down as I wiped table 14 for the third time even though the customers had left 20 minutes ago. Friday nights in Manhattan always smelled the same inside upscale restaurants. Expensive wine. Burnt butter. Wet wool coats dripping onto marble floors. But tonight, underneath all of it, I could still smell his cologne on my skin. Tyler had cornered me outside before my shift started, fingers wrapped too tightly around my wrist while he whispered apologies that sounded more like warnings. "You embarrass me when you ignore my calls, Claire." Like I was the one doing something wrong. Like I was the problem. I swallowed hard and stacked another set of wine glasses onto my tray. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. "You okay?" Mia asked beside me, tying her apron tighter around her waist. "You look pale." "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. It always did. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me, but the hostess called her name before she could push further. I exhaled slowly and adjusted the sleeve of my black uniform lower over the faint bruise near my wrist. Then the front doors opened. Every conversation in the restaurant softened without fully stopping. It was strange how power worked. Real power didn't need attention. It absorbed it naturally. Damien Moretti walked in wearing a charcoal overcoat darkened by rain, one hand tucked into his pocket while two men in black suits followed half a step behind him. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. He never was. But people noticed anyway. Maybe it was the stillness in him. Maybe it was the way wealthy men straightened instinctively when he passed their tables. Or maybe it was his eyes. Cold green. Sharp enough to make you feel examined from across the room. I looked down immediately. "Claire," Marco hissed near my shoulder. "VIP table. Don't mess this up." Of course it was my section. Of course tonight had to get worse. I grabbed a bottle of Barolo and forced myself toward the private corner booth near the windows overlooking Lexington Avenue. Rain streaked the glass behind him, blurring Manhattan into gold and gray watercolor lights. Damien sat slowly, removing his leather gloves one finger at a time while the other men remained standing until he nodded once. Everything about him looked expensive. Controlled. Dangerous in a kind of way that didn't need proving. I poured the wine carefully, praying my hands would cooperate. They didn't. One drop splashed against the white tablecloth. Tiny. Barely noticeable. But my stomach clenched anyway. "I'm sorry," I whispered immediately. Damien looked up at me for the first time. Not at my uniform. Not at my body. At my face. Directly. The restaurant noise faded into something muffled and distant. His gaze moved slowly from my trembling hand to my eyes, still swollen from crying in the employee bathroom 10 minutes earlier. Then lower. To the sleeve I kept tugging down over my wrist. Something unreadable crossed his expression. Not pity. Worse. Recognition. "Claire Bennett," he said quietly, like he already knew the answer before asking. My heartbeat stumbled. I had never told him my name. Why yes. He leaned back slightly, watching me with terrifying calm while thunder rolled somewhere above the city. "Who made you cry?" My throat closed instantly. Not because of the question. But because nobody had ever asked it like that before. Like the answer actually mattered. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The question stayed suspended between us while rain crawled down the windows behind him in silver streaks. Nobody at Belladonna's looked at people the way Damien Moretti did. Most wealthy men noticed waitresses only when their drinks were late or their steak was overcooked. Damien looked at me like he was trying to solve something dangerous. "Nobody," I said too quickly. My voice cracked on the word. "Great. Perfect." I tightened my grip on the wine bottle and forced a smile that probably looked painful. It was just a long night. One of the men sitting beside him shifted slightly in his seat, dark eyes flicking toward Damien like he was waiting for instructions. Damien never looked away from me. Long nights do not usually leave fingerprints on someone's wrist. Ice slid down my spine. Instinctively, my free hand yanked my sleeve lower. Too late. His gaze had already caught the faint purple shadow near my skin. Heat rushed into my face. Shame always came first. Not anger. Not fear. Shame. Like maybe if I had been calmer or smarter or easier to love, none of it would happen in the first place. I walked into a shelf in the storage room, I lied softly. Damien's expression did not change. Somehow that made it worse. Men usually reacted when they caught lies. Frustration. Mockery. Satisfaction. Damien only became quieter. Do you always apologize before people accuse you of something? He asked. I blinked at him. What? You said sorry before anyone blamed you. His voice stayed calm, almost conversational. That usually means someone has trained you to expect punishment. My throat tightened so fast it hurt. The sounds of the restaurant blurred again. Dishes clattering. Soft jazz drifting from hidden speakers. Marco yelling at someone near the kitchen. Everything felt distant compared to the terrifying accuracy of the man sitting in front of me. I should get back to work, I whispered. I reached for the wine glass nearest him, desperate for an excuse to move, but my hand betrayed me again. It trembled hard enough for the crystal to rattle softly against the table. Damien's eyes dropped to it immediately. Then, without warning, his fingers closed gently around my wrist. Not rough. Not possessive. Steady. Warm. My entire body froze. His hand was large enough to completely still the shaking. Claire. My name sounded different in his voice. Slower. Careful. Like something fragile he did not trust the world with. Look at me. I should not have obeyed him. Every survival instinct I had spent the last 2 years building screamed not to. Men who demanded eye contact usually wanted control. But Damien did not pull harder. Did not threaten. He simply waited. So I looked at him. And that was my mistake. Because there was no cruelty in his expression. Only a terrifying kind of focus. Like he saw every exhausted part of me I worked so hard to hide. Whoever hurt you, he said quietly, has made you believe your pain is inconvenient to everyone around you. My chest physically ached hearing it spoken out loud. Nobody had ever described it before. Not like that. I opened my mouth to deny it again, but suddenly I could not force the words out. Damien released my wrist slowly, like he already understood the answer anyway. Then he leaned back in his chair and reached for his wine glass with calm precision. Go home after your shift tonight, Claire, he said softly. And do not stop anywhere alone. Fear curled low in my stomach. Why would you say that? One corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. Something colder. Because men who enjoy making women cry rarely enjoy losing control of them. The rest of my shift felt like walking through deep water. Every time the front doors opened, my heart jumped. Every time someone said my name, I looked up too fast. And somehow, no matter where I moved inside Belladonna's, I could still feel Damien Moretti watching me from the corner booth near the rain-covered windows. Not constantly. That would have been easier to understand. Worse, actually. No, Damien watched me the way predators watched storms. Quietly. Patiently. Like he already knew exactly when things would break apart. By 11:30, the dinner crowd had thinned into scattered businessmen and exhausted tourists lingering over overpriced desserts. My feet hurt so badly I could feel my pulse in my heels. I carried a tray of empty martini glasses back toward the kitchen when Marco snapped his fingers near the service station. "Claire, table 6 needs their check. And smile a little, yeah. You look like somebody died." I forced my mouth upward automatically. "Sorry." Marco frowned slightly. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because I apologized for everything. Because keeping people calm felt safer than disappointing them. Because Tyler once ignored me for 3 straight days after I answered a question with the wrong tone." I swallowed the thought before it could finish forming. "Never mind," I murmured. The kitchen doors swung open behind me with a burst of heat and noise. Mia brushed past carrying a basket of breadsticks. "Your boyfriend came in earlier looking for you," she whispered carefully. My stomach dropped instantly. "What?" "I told him you were busy." She lowered her voice further. "Claire, he gave me a weird vibe." Weird vibe. That was one way to describe Tyler lately. Another would have been unpredictable. Another would have been exhausting. Another would have been the reason I had started flinching every time my phone buzzed. I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my cell phone with trembling fingers. 7 missed calls. 4 voicemails. 12 text messages. The newest one sat glowing at the top of the screen. "We need to talk. Do not ignore me again." My chest tightened so hard I had to look away. "Claire." Damien's voice behind me nearly stopped my heart. I turned too quickly, almost dropping the tray. He stood alone near the hallway leading toward the private dining rooms, suit jacket buttoned now, rain darkening the shoulders of his coat again like he had stepped outside recently. Up close, he looked even more dangerous somehow. Controlled in a way that made every movement feel intentional. "You are shaking," he said quietly. I curled my fingers tighter around the tray handles. "I am tired." His eyes flicked briefly toward the phone still clutched in my hand. He did not ask to see it. Did not demand answers. Somehow that restraint unsettled me more than pressure would have. "The man texting you," he said calmly. "Does he make you afraid?" No, the lie came too fast again. Damien studied me for a long moment beneath the dim hallway lights. Then he stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice enough that only I could hear him over the distant restaurant noise. "Claire, I grew up around men who believed fear was the same thing as love." My breathing slowed involuntarily. "It is not." Something fragile cracked quietly inside my chest hearing that. Because nobody had ever said those words to me before either. My phone buzzed again violently in my hand, making me jump. Tyler's name flashed across the screen. Damien saw it. His expression did not change at all. But the temperature around him seemed to drop several degrees. "Answer it," he said softly. "Put it on speaker." Fear rushed through me instantly. "Why?" His gaze locked onto mine with terrifying stillness. "Because I want to hear how he talks to you when he thinks nobody important is listening." Every instinct in my body screamed not to do it. I stared at my phone while Tyler's name flashed across the screen again and again, lighting my trembling fingers blue beneath the dim hallway lights. Damien waited beside me without speaking. Calm. Patient. Somehow that patience felt more dangerous than anger ever could. "I cannot," I whispered. "Why?" His voice stayed low. Controlled. "Because if I answer now, he will know something is different." Damien tilted his head slightly like that answer interested him. "And that frightens you?" It was not a question. I hated how easily he saw through me. I swallowed hard and looked toward the dining room where crystal glasses shimmered beneath warm amber lights. Normal people laughed out there. Celebrated birthdays. Argued over wine lists. Meanwhile my entire nervous system felt wired tight enough to snap. The phone stopped ringing. Relief flooded me too quickly. Then another message appeared. If you keep disrespecting me, do not blame me for how I react. Damien read the change in my face instantly. Let me guess, he said softly. He apologizes after hurting you and punishes you when you pull away. I looked up sharply. How do you know that? Something unreadable flickered across his eyes. Old anger maybe. Old memory. Because men like that are painfully predictable. Before I could answer, the back entrance door slammed open hard enough to rattle the hallway mirrors. My heart nearly stopped. Tyler stood there soaked from the rain, dark blonde hair plastered to his forehead, breathing hard like he had rushed over from Midtown on foot. He spotted me instantly. Claire. My stomach dropped so fast it hurt. Tyler smiled the second he saw me, but it looked strained around the edges. Performative. Like a man trying to appear calm while losing an argument with himself internally. I have been calling you for an hour. I stepped backward automatically. Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. Tyler's eyes finally shifted toward him standing beside me. Confusion flickered across his face first. Then irritation. Who is this? Damien slid one hand casually into his coat pocket. Someone asking the same question about you. The air changed immediately. Tyler straightened slightly, forcing out a laugh that sounded brittle. Claire, can we talk outside for a second? I am working. 5 minutes. His tone sharpened. You cannot ignore me forever. My pulse thudded painfully against my throat. I hated this part most. The moment where everyone expected me to smooth things over. Calm him down. Prevent embarrassment. Prevent conflict. Tyler stepped closer. You left my messages unread. Damien moved then. Just one step. Silent. Precise. Enough to place himself slightly between us without touching either of us. Tyler noticed instantly. Look, man, he said tightly. This is between me and my girlfriend. Damien's expression stayed perfectly calm. Funny. His voice dropped lower. She looks terrified every time you move. Tyler laughed again, louder this time. Defensive. Claire is emotional. She overthinks things. I opened my mouth automatically. Tyler, it is okay, no, Damien interrupted quietly. The single word stopped me cold. He looked at me then, not Tyler. Do not shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. My chest tightened so sharply it almost hurt to breathe. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that before. Like I deserved space instead of apology. Tyler's jaw flexed hard. Claire, he said carefully, eyes never leaving Damien now. Who exactly is this guy? The silence stretched for one terrifying second too long. Then Marco appeared from the kitchen carrying invoices, took one look at Damien, and nearly dropped everything. His face lost all color. Mr. Moretti, he blurted instantly. I did not realize you were still here. Tyler went completely still beside me. I felt it happen before I understood why. The sudden shift in the air. The sudden awareness in Tyler's expression. Recognition. Fear. Damien finally looked at him fully for the first time. Calm green eyes. Perfectly steady. Now, he said softly, I think you know exactly who I am. Tyler. Stopped breathing normally after that. I saw it happen in real time. The slight widening of his eyes. The tension locking his shoulders. Even the color draining slowly from his face beneath the restaurant lights. Everybody in New York knew the Moretti name. Maybe not officially. Men like Damien did not appear on magazine covers or Forbes lists. But people whispered about him anyway. Quietly. Carefully. Like speaking too loudly might summon attention they did not want. Tyler stepped backward first. Just half a step. But Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. "Mr. Moretti," Tyler said quickly, forcing out an awkward smile that looked painful around the edges. "I did not realize Claire was working a private event tonight." Damien stayed perfectly still. She was not. The silence afterward felt suffocating. Rain pounded against the alley door behind us while Tyler visibly searched for the safest version of himself to become. I had seen him do this before with police officers. With landlords. With men wealthier than him. He reshaped his personality depending on who stood in front of him. "Claire and I were actually just leaving," he continued carefully. "I came to pick her up." My stomach tightened instantly. Damien's gaze shifted toward me. "Were you?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out immediately. Because the truth was complicated. Tyler always expected me to leave with him eventually. Even after arguments. Even after crying. Even after nights where I sat locked in my bathroom trying to breathe quietly enough not to start another fight. "Claire." Tyler pressed harder now. Warning hidden beneath the softness of my name. Damien heard that too. I knew he did because something cold settled behind his eyes. "She can answer for herself," he said calmly. Nobody had ever said that to Tyler before. Nobody. Tyler laughed softly, but there was panic underneath it now. "Come on, man. Couples fight. That does not mean you get involved." Damien adjusted the cuff of his black coat with slow precision. Interesting choice of words. Tyler swallowed hard. "What? You called her emotional earlier." Damien's voice stayed dangerously even. "Now you call her difficult." Men usually reveal themselves when they think they are explaining women. Tyler looked at me immediately. "Claire, seriously? Are you talking about our relationship with strangers now?" Shame hit me on instinct. Immediate. Crushing. "No," I said too fast. I did not say anything. Damien looked at me then with something that almost resembled disappointment. Not in me. In the reflex itself. The reflex to protect the person hurting me. Tyler stepped closer carefully, lowering his voice into the softer tone he used when other people were watching. "Baby, you know I care about you. You know I just worry." My chest tightened. Because 6 months ago I would have believed him completely. Maybe part of me still wanted to. That was the worst part about emotional exhaustion. Eventually confusion started feeling normal. Damien slid one hand into his coat pocket again. Calm. Controlled. "You should leave now," he told Tyler quietly. Tyler blinked. "Excuse me?" "You are making her heartbeat spike from 6 feet away." Damien's voice dropped lower. "That alone tells me enough." Tyler's face hardened for one dangerous second before he forced the smile back again. "I think Claire should decide who she leaves with." Damien finally looked directly at him. No anger. Somehow that was more terrifying. "You are mistaking her survival instincts for consent." The words hit me harder than anyone in that hallway. My throat burned instantly. Tyler noticed my expression change and panic flashed across his face again. "Claire." His voice sharpened. "Tell him." "Tell him what?" "That I loved Tyler. I used to." "That Tyler was trying. Maybe sometimes." "That I was tired of apologizing for crying in my own apartment." "Absolutely." My silence stretched too long. Tyler saw it. Damien saw it too. One of Damien's men appeared quietly at the far end of the hallway near the exit, umbrella already open beneath the storm outside. Damien never looked away from Tyler when he spoke again. "Leave the restaurant," he said softly. "And if you genuinely care about her at all, spend tonight asking yourself why she looks relieved standing this far away from you." Tyler left without another word. That was the part that unsettled me most. No slammed doors. No angry speech. No accusations thrown across the hallway. He just stared at Damien for one long silent second, grabbed his jacket tighter around himself, and walked back out into the rain like something inside him had finally recognized a boundary it could not push through. The second the door closed behind him, my knees nearly gave out from exhaustion. Not relief exactly. More like the strange emptiness that came after holding your breath too long. Damien noticed immediately. "Sit down before you fall down," he said quietly. I blinked at him. "I am fine." His expression barely shifted. "Claire." Just my name again. Low. Calm. Somehow impossible to argue with. He guided me toward a chair near the empty private dining room without touching me, which only made me more aware of him somehow. Most men crowded space when they wanted control. Damien seemed dangerous because he did not need to. I sat slowly while thunder rolled above Manhattan again. The restaurant had gone nearly silent now except for distant kitchen noise and soft jazz drifting through hidden ceiling speakers. Damien remained standing near the doorway, one hand resting loosely in his coat pocket while rainwater darkened the edges of his black sleeves. "Does he always speak to you like that?" he asked finally. I stared down at my hands. "Tyler is complicated." "No," his voice stayed even. "Complicated is tax law. Complicated is surgery. Men are usually simple." I almost smiled despite myself. "Almost. You do not understand." Damien watched me carefully for a moment before stepping closer to the table. "Then explain it to me." My throat tightened immediately. Because where would I even begin? With the way Tyler used to bring me coffee during nursing classes? The way he memorized my Starbucks order after 2 dates? Or the way I now checked his mood before speaking in my own apartment? "He was not always like this," I whispered eventually. Damien's jaw flexed slightly at that. "That sentence has trapped a lot of women in unhappy lives." I looked away toward the rain-streaked windows. "You make him sound horrible. You flinch when your phone vibrates." His voice softened slightly. "I am simply describing what I see." Silence stretched between us again. Heavy. Not uncomfortable exactly. Just honest in a way I was no longer used to. Damien pulled something from inside his coat pocket and placed it carefully on the table beside me. A folded white handkerchief. Expensive. Impossibly clean. I frowned slightly. "What is this?" "Mascara." I touched beneath my eyes instinctively and realized there were still faint streaks from crying earlier. Heat flooded my face immediately. "Oh my God." Damien looked almost amused for the first time all night. "Almost." "Claire." I glanced up carefully. "You apologize every time you exist too loudly." My chest tightened painfully. "I do not." His eyes held mine steadily. "You apologized for crying. For spilling wine. For shaking. For sitting down." He tilted his head slightly. "Has anyone in your life ever allowed you to simply feel something without making you earn forgiveness for it?" I could not answer. Because the terrifying truth was, no. The room suddenly felt too warm. Too small. Damien saw the panic rising in my expression immediately. "Breathe," he said softly. I inhaled shakily. "I am not trying to upset you." "Then why does it feel like you see everything?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Damien went very still after that. Something distant flickered briefly across his face. Not anger. Memory. "Because," he said quietly, "once upon a time, somebody noticed when I was falling apart too." The way he said it made my heart beat slow unexpectedly. There was grief in his voice. Deep enough to drown in. Before I could ask what he meant, one of his men appeared silently near the doorway. "The car is ready, sir." Damien nodded once without looking away from me. Then he reached into his pocket again and slid a black business card slowly across the table. No title. No company name. Just a phone number embossed in silver. If he scares you tonight, he said calmly, you call me. I stared at the card like it might burn my fingers. Why would you help me? Damien looked at me for a very long time before answering. Because someone should have done it sooner. I did not call Damien. That night. I came close twice. Once while standing inside my apartment staring at Tyler's name flashing across my phone again at 1:30 in the morning. And again around 3 when headlights slowed outside my building for too long and panic climbed into my throat so fast I almost reached for the black card sitting on my kitchen counter beside unpaid nursing school bills and cold coffee. But I never called. Because part of me still felt ridiculous for even considering it. Men like Damien Moretti did not step into ordinary people's lives. They existed above them. Untouchable. Dangerous. Temporary. By Saturday afternoon, I had almost convinced myself the entire night at Belladonna's had been some strange emotional hallucination caused by stress and exhaustion. Then Tyler lost his job. What do you mean they fired you? I asked quietly over the phone while standing in line at a pharmacy near Lexington Avenue. Rainwater dripped from my umbrella onto the tile floor beneath my sneakers. Tyler sounded furious. More than furious. Shaken. They said corporate is restructuring. That happens sometimes. Claire. His voice dropped lower. I got promoted 2 weeks ago. A strange cold feeling slid slowly through my stomach. Outside the pharmacy windows, Manhattan traffic crawled through wet streets beneath gray skies. Maybe it is temporary, I offered weakly. Tyler laughed sharply. Yeah. Then explain why my apartment application suddenly got denied this morning too. My grip tightened on the basket in my hand. What? Perfect credit score last month. Now suddenly there is an issue with my background check. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Wrong. Then Tyler said the one thing I had been trying desperately not to think about since last night. What exactly did you say to that man? My heartbeat stumbled hard. Nothing. Do not lie to me right now. People in line glanced over briefly at my raised pulse and strained voice. I lowered my tone immediately out of instinct. Tyler, I swear, I barely know him. Then why does it suddenly feel like my entire life is collapsing? Fear curled low in my stomach. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. Damien Moretti. I should have felt horrified. Maybe I did. But underneath the fear was another emotion I hated myself for even recognizing. Relief. Tyler scared me less today than he had yesterday. That realization alone made me feel sick. Claire. Tyler's voice softened unexpectedly now. Dangerous in a different way. You know I love you, right? There it was. The emotional whiplash. Anger turning into vulnerability so fast it made reality hard to trust. I just need you to tell me the truth. I closed my eyes briefly. I did not ask Damien to do anything. The silence on Tyler's end stretched too long. Damien, he repeated quietly. Hearing another man say Damien's first name out loud sounded strange somehow. Intimate in a way I did not like. You are calling him Damien now? Shame rushed through me instantly even though I had done nothing wrong. Tyler exhaled sharply into the phone. Jesus Christ, Claire. It is not like that. Then what is it like? I had no answer for him. Because I did not understand it myself. I barely knew Damien. Yet somehow his voice kept replaying in my head anyway. You apologize every time you exist too loudly. A car horn blared outside the pharmacy windows. Somewhere behind me a child laughed near the checkout aisle. Ordinary life continued while my entire world tilted slightly off balance. Claire, Tyler said quietly now. People are scared of that man. My throat tightened. Are you? He hesitated too long. That terrified me more than if he had answered immediately. You should stay away from him, Tyler whispered finally. Before I could respond, another call buzzed softly through on my phone screen. Unknown number. Manhattan area code. My stomach dropped instantly because somehow I already knew who it was. Tyler heard the silence. Who is calling you? I stared at the screen while my pulse thundered against my ribs. Then slowly, I answered. Hello. Damien's voice came low and calm through the speaker. Did he frighten you today? For a second, I forgot Tyler was still on the line. The entire pharmacy disappeared around me the moment I heard Damien's voice again. Calm. Deep. Controlled in that terrifying way that made every word sound deliberate. Claire, he repeated softly when I did not answer immediately. Tyler's breathing sharpened through the other line. Who is that? I stepped away from the checkout aisle instinctively, moving toward the back corner near shelves of cold medicine and vitamins. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while rain streaked the windows facing Lexington Avenue. My pulse would not slow down. Why are you calling me? I asked quietly. Damien paused briefly. Interesting. What is? You sound nervous hearing my voice. I pressed my fingers harder around the shopping basket handle. Maybe because strange things keep happening around me after meeting you. Silence. Then Damien sighed softly through the phone like he had expected that answer. Your boyfriend lost his job because he forged financial reports 6 months ago. I froze completely. What? The apartment application was denied because he lied about prior debt collections. His voice stayed even. I did not create those problems, Claire. I simply stopped certain people from ignoring them. My stomach twisted hard. Somewhere behind me, a cashier laughed at something near the front registers. The normalcy of it felt surreal compared to the conversation happening in my ear. You investigated him? The moment I saw fear in your face, yes. His honesty hit harder than denial would have. That is insane. No, Damien said quietly. What is insane is how quickly women are taught to normalize being emotionally exhausted. I closed my eyes briefly. You cannot control people's lives because you dislike them. I dislike very few people. His voice cooled slightly. I simply have no patience for cruelty disguised as affection. Tyler suddenly spoke again through the other line, startling me because I had forgotten he was still listening. Claire, hang up the phone. Damien heard him instantly. He is still there. Heat flooded my face. I forgot the call was connected. A long silence followed. Then Damien laughed softly under his breath for the first time since meeting him. Low. Brief. Dangerous. That explains why your breathing changes every time he speaks. Tyler's voice sharpened immediately. Stay away from her. Damien's tone never changed. That decision belongs to Claire. My throat tightened painfully because nobody ever said things like that around Tyler. Nobody challenged the invisible pressure he placed around every conversation. You think you are helping her? Tyler snapped. You do not even know her. Damien went quiet for one long second. When he spoke again, his voice sounded different somehow. Distant. Older. I know what it looks like when someone apologizes for existing. Something inside my chest cracked hearing that. Tyler scoffed bitterly. You sound obsessed. No, Damien replied calmly. Obsessed men want ownership. I simply want her safe enough to remember who she was before somebody taught her fear. Tears burned unexpectedly behind my eyes. I hated that he understood me this easily. Hated it because part of me already trusted him more than I should. Tyler must have heard the silence too because panic crept into his voice now. Claire, listen to me carefully. Men like him are dangerous. I swallowed hard and stared at my reflection in the pharmacy window. Pale face. Exhausted eyes. 26 years old and constantly tired in ways sleep never fixed. Maybe, I whispered. But somehow. I only feel scared when you are the one talking. Tyler stopped breathing for a second. Real silence this time. Raw and stunned. I covered my mouth immediately after saying it like maybe I could force the words back inside me. Too late. Damien said nothing at all. Somehow that silence felt heavier than anything else. Tyler disconnected first. The call ended with a sharp click in my ear, leaving only Damien and me breathing softly through separate phones across Manhattan. Claire. My voice shook. What? Rain tapped softly against the pharmacy windows now instead of pounding. Gentler somehow. Damien's answer came low and careful. That was the first honest thing you have said since meeting me. The call stayed quiet for several seconds after that. I stood frozen beside a display of cough syrup while people moved around me carrying baskets and shopping bags and ordinary weekend lives. Somewhere near the front registers, a little girl begged her mother for candy. A man laughed too loudly near the automatic doors. And all I could think about was the terrifying relief of finally saying something true out loud. Claire. Damien's voice softened slightly through the phone. Are you crying again? I touched beneath my eyes instinctively and realized tears had slipped free without me noticing. I do not know why this keeps happening around you. Because exhaustion eventually reaches the surface. His voice stayed calm. You have just spent too long forcing it back down. I leaned against the cold pharmacy shelf behind me, suddenly too tired to stand properly anymore. You make everything sound simple. No, a pause. I make it sound honest. The difference settled heavily inside my chest. Honest. I was not even sure I remembered what honesty felt like anymore. Not fully. Not after 2 years of reshaping myself around someone else's moods. Tyler was not always bad, I whispered finally. I believe you. Damien answered immediately. No hesitation. That is what makes leaving difficult. My throat tightened painfully. Then why does everybody act like it should be easy? Because people judge pain they have never survived. The automatic doors slid open somewhere nearby, letting cold rain-scented air drift briefly through the pharmacy. I closed my eyes. You talk like you understand this too well. Silence answered me at first. Not empty silence. Heavy silence. The kind people carried when memories still hurt years later. When I was 19, Damien said quietly, someone I loved spent 2 years apologizing to a man who did not deserve her kindness. I straightened slightly. What happened to her? Another pause. Longer this time. She stopped believing she deserved peace. Something about the way he said it made my chest ache unexpectedly. I could suddenly picture it too clearly. A younger version of Damien watching someone disappear emotionally little by little while being powerless to stop it. Was she your girlfriend? I asked softly. My sister. The noise around me faded instantly. Oh. Rain tapped softly against the windows again while Manhattan blurred gray beyond the glass. Damien exhaled slowly through the phone. You sounded like her the first night I heard you crying. My heartbeat stumbled hard. That is why you noticed me. No, his voice dropped lower now. More personal somehow. I noticed you because despite everything, you were still gentle with everyone around you. My throat burned instantly. Claire, do you understand how rare that is? I could not answer. Because nobody had ever spoken about me like that before. Tyler used to call me sensitive like it was a weakness. Exhausting. Emotional. Difficult. Damien spoke about softness like it was survival. I should go home, I whispered finally. You should. His voice steadied again into calm control. But not because somebody frightened you into isolation. I glanced outside at the rain-soaked city streets. Then why? Because you looked tired enough to fall asleep standing up. A weak laugh escaped me unexpectedly. Small. Real. Damien went quiet after hearing it. What? I asked softly. Nothing. But something warmer entered his voice anyway. That is the first time I have heard you laugh. Heat crept slowly into my face. I looked down at the black business card still tucked inside my jacket pocket like it weighed more than paper should. Damien? Yes. I hesitated. Then finally asked the question sitting heavily in my chest since Belladonna's. What happens now? Rain rolled softly across Manhattan outside while strangers hurried past the windows beneath umbrellas and traffic lights. Damien answered without hesitation. Now. His voice dropped lower. Steadier. Certain in a way that made my heart beat slow instead of race. Now nobody gets to make you cry alone anymore.